See, family. Glad to be back with you. Hope you've been having a fantastic week. Oh, I forgot I got my do rag on. Sorry, I keep it sexy. You think not? Like, I ain't been doing this since Pampers and Slingshots. Mm. Do do do. Okay, give me a second. I'm trying to make sure my streaming stuff is correct on Twitch. Oh no. Cancel. Okay. Any follow? All right. I want to make sure I fix up my chat. But anyway, family. Now I'm focused. We can get our party started. Again, I hope you've been having a fantastic week. I'm glad to be back with you. Today is my Friday. Whoop, 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 whoop. So I'm crunk. And I worked hard this week. Pretty much had a mini conference, and this me and one of my coworkers did most of the trainings, did all the trainings yesterday. Today I got to sit through a couple, but I was supportive. Okay, my TV got a tendency to cut on. So if you're new here, this is Soul Swami Live Thursday Night Book Club. On Soul Swami channel, we pretty much discuss all things healing. And Thursday night, well, we have Tuesday and Thursday night shows. Tuesday is our main show where we discuss healing in various formats, whether it be energy readings, whether it be homework, discussions. There's a multitude of ways. And Thursday Night Book Club is a spinoff of our Tuesday night show in an effort to reconnect with the child in us and by allowing someone to read to us. Or we join in and we just enjoy the calming effect of that. Every week at the start of our show, we have a chakra energy point that we are working on. This week it is the solar plexus, which is one of my favorites. If you like what you see, comment, share, subscribe, do all that good stuff. You can catch us here Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. That is on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. So again, we are on our solar plexus, which resides in your stomach. Boop, 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 boop. Yeah, I spent some time with my emotions and realize I'm hiding some in my stomach right now. The solar plexus is good for your personal power, your self-esteem, your strength, your ego. It'll say, I always laugh at that because you got a big belly, you might get a big ego. And your confidence. The element for your solar plexus is fire. If you are in the essential oils, you want to think yellow. Lemongrass, cedarwood, juniper, ginger. Oh, lemon and lemongrass. Both of those are good things. If you want to think of stones, you want to think of citrine, topaz, yellow jasper, tiger's eye. I got some. I pointed back because I got some yellow sulfur back there on my little rock table or supply table. Excuse me. So to get us started, we're going to do a little sound bowl, and then we'll do some breath work, and maybe a visualization, but we'll see. I kind of just want to read to y'all tonight, so. Hey. Whoop whoop. Oh, don't even show. That's bananas. B-A-N-A. Oh, I forgot. Facebook like 10 minutes behind. Thanks for the love. Facebox. And just because it's me, I want to do my ukulele. play with it on my own time. For the breathing exercise, we did 444 on Tuesday. Yeah, let's do 444 today. I think I want to skip the visualization. And we're just going to do breath work and affirmations. So if you don't remember or you're new here, we're doing the 444 exercise. That is scratch. Let's do 369. So that is you breathe in, you hold it for a 3 count, then you release. You breathe in, hold it for a 6 count, then we release. And again, we breathe in, hold it for a 9 count, and then we leave. And I literally I'm big on accountability. And a lot of people don't like to be accountable for their actions, which is always interesting to me. It's always easier to blame the other person. Like, well, they lied. What in you allowed you to believe those lies? Right? If you trust yourself enough, and you trust yourself, and you navigate, lies don't hit the same as the truth. They don't carry the same energy. What's going on? Facebook be acting crazy too. Alright, so we're going to do 369 and affirmations, and we're going to get into the book. So just follow my directions, focusing on your breathing and your thoughts, and reigniting that fire inside of you that burns so strong. On my count of 3, we'll start breathing in. 1, 2, 3. Breathe in. Hold it for a 3 count. 1, 2, 3. Release. Breathe in deep. Hold it for a 6 count. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Release. Breathe in. Hold it for a 9 count. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Release. Again, family. Breathe in deep. Hold for 3, 2, 3. Release. Breathe in deep. Hold for 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Release. Breathe in deep. Hold for 9, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Release. Last time, family. Breathe in deep. Hold for 3, 2, 3. Release. Breathe in deep. Hold for 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Release. Breathe in deep. Hold for 9, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And release. Relax, breathe in, and repeat these affirmations after me. I am confident. I act with courage. I am a powerful being. I am motivated, persistent, and successful. And I honor myself. I am confident. I act with courage. I am a powerful being. I am motivated, persistent, and successful. And I honor myself. All right, family. We're going to get to the story. I don't even remember where we at in the book, so we will find out together. Now, oh, man, did you die? You gotta wait for the unit to charge up. Well, not charge up, but turn on. I had it plugged up charging, so I know it's charged. How much? No say. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. I just think it's interesting the way we as humans avoid accountability for our choices and decisions and actions. And it's very interesting when people be so quick to blame other people. Well, they lied, or they weren't being their true selves, or and if that's the truth, then you carry that same energy too. You just haven't acknowledged it yet. But most of our experiences, all of our experiences, are based on our choices. And the lessons we learn from those experiences are based on how we process that information. So, God bless. Definitely. And a lot of people want to reside in a space of hurt. So, if you suggest taking accountability or anything like that, people will be like, okay, man, what you doing? It's wild, wild. My Miss American Pie drove the Chevy to the levee, but the good old boy drinking whiskey and rye. Oh, man. You gotta do an update and everything. And I'm very good at leaving a conversation, especially with people with a victim mindset. I do not support victim mindsets. I do not support victim mindsets. I do not support victim mindsets. Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm. All right, so now we in business. Do 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 do. What we doing? Twitch. Hey, I ain't even lying, man. We keeping it extra calm. Well, I'm calm today. I don't care. It's my Friday. Like I said, I had a long, busy week. Oh my God. I thought you was already started. Some pollen decreasing tomorrow. I ain't in Washington, man. What are you talking about? I need some pollen decreasing. What we better do? Excuse me. Read era. That is a nice little app to keep track of all of your books. Oh, makes me wanna holler the way they do my life. Do 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 do. Running. Where we at? 493. I know he done got married, and his wife and her mama driving him crazy. He has yet to really accept accountability of his issues. He's just accepted the guilt. So he feels guilty, but he won't allow himself to feel other things. So the guilt is allowing him to make very interesting decisions with his life. But chapter 36, running. I stayed mad so much about one thing or another that I felt like at times I would explode. I began to wonder how long I'd last in white mainstream. Oh yeah, you getting tired of working at that? Oh my God. It was always there, just below the surface, and it took a toll on me. There's a liquor store at the intersection of Pryor Street and Memorial Drive downtown, just 5 minutes from where I work. Every evening when I drove past the store after work, I see 20 to 30 down and out brothers hanging around on the side of the building, bumming coins to buy some brew. It reminded me of the days when I hung out on the side of the 7-Eleven in Cavalier Manor, stealing, gambling, and bumming money from patrons to get some of that sweet-eyed wild Irish rose. That's just terrible. Some evenings when I was feeling really low and wondered how long I would last in the system, I'd ride real slow past the liquor store and reminisce about the old days at home, the camaraderie I enjoyed, and the warmth I felt, even when we were standing in the cold. I'd look at that Atlanta crowd and see myself in the fellas. Shane, Bimbo, Frog, Dicky, Lep, Turkey Buzzard, Shell Shock, and Cooter. I'd look at those guys outside the liquor store and long for the days when life seemed so simple. When I was far away from the white folks, as far as the end of the universe, I fantasized about pulling a car into the parking lot. In my fantasy, I'd get out, take a spot beside the dudes on the wall, chip in my few coins, and take the wine bottle when it was passed my way. I'd guzzle down the wine and wait for it to travel to my brain and deaden all the pain and frustration I felt inside. I'd get pissy drunk and to harmonize on tunes by the Temptations, join in on the lively debates about boxing, politics, and women. I'd chill, just like the brothers on the side of that store. But there was no way I could do that now. I'd cross the tracks and become a card-carrying member of white mainstream. If I pulled into that driveway and got out, the fellas at that side of the store would instantly peg me by my uniform, the necktie and monkey suit. They would identify me as Hosea Williams once did, and Uncle Tom and Oreo, the white man's puppet. So I always kept going, always drove past the store and went on home and prepared to face a day on the plantation. After nearly a year and a half at the Journal Constitution, I realized that The time has come for me to prepare to leave. This is unhealthy, and my health is more important than my job. March 23rd, 1984. A lot of us struggle to make that decision. I know I've done before, especially when you get caught up in responsibilities and bills. You get trapped. Less than 3 years after that journal entry, I was on a flight headed to New York for a job interview and wondering why it had taken so long to do what I should have done all along. I'd concluded it was time to leave the white man's mainstream and go to work for blacks. Considering my training, the most logical place to look was the black press. I landed a job interview with Black Enterprise magazine. I had done freelance stories for the magazine since 1983 when I first got to Atlanta. A former college mate was the editor and fed me story assignments all the time. Finally, he contacted me and said, "Nathan, I just thought I'd let you know that we're hiring. We need some good journalists and I recommended you. We're planning to revamp the whole publication and move the magazine in a different direction." I had mixed feelings about the job. Whenever I published stories in Black Enterprise, I felt a sense of pride, like I was giving something back to my community. But as time passed, I began to suspect that the publisher was more concerned with using Black Enterprise as his own personal organ. Whenever I wrote personality profiles that alluded in the slightest way to controversy involving prominent blacks, those passages were cut. I grew tired of writing one-sided fluff pieces suggesting that all was well in black America when I knew that wasn't true. And then there was the issue of money. Everybody knows the black press pays a lot less than the white-owned media. I'd have gladly taken a pay cut to get some purpose to my work and some peace of mind, but with a wife and children, there were limits to how low I could afford to go. Before leaving for the interview, I devised a proposal. I'd take a pay cut if they allowed me to work from Atlanta, where the cost of living was lower. I got to New York and went to the magazine offices. There was the usual battery of interviews. Then came time to talk to the managing editor, a smart, easygoing woman whom had worked with on stories before. After we got all the small talk out the way, she went to the point. "Yes," she said, "they were planning to make some editorial changes to revamp the magazine." No, she couldn't give me any assurances about the direction of the magazine. And then, on the issue of pay, "The most we can pay you is $25,000 per year, and you would have to move to New York." I was shocked. That was much less than I was making in Atlanta. With the family, that would be like committing financial suicide. Disappointed, I turned them down. I returned to Atlanta determined and desperate to find a way out the system. I looked into every option that crossed my mind. I contacted the publisher of the local black weekly, the Atlanta Daily World, to talk with him about working there. I talked with some of my old college colleagues about us starting our own paper, like Huron, my old buddy who grew dreadlocks and moved to California. I desperately wanted out of Babylon. I even looked into the possibility of moving to Africa to start a new life. Years before, when I was about 3, our family went to live in Morocco, where my stepfather was stationed in the Navy. I was too young to appreciate the experience of living in North Africa, but I remember that my brothers and I loved it there. My parents did too. They said it was the first place they'd ever lived that they didn't have to enter through back doors and heed whites-only signs everywhere they went. They liked it so much that they tried, unsuccessfully, to get an extension of my stepfather's tour of duty. We left after 2 years and returned to Norfolk in 1959. I always wondered if I can go back there or somewhere else in Africa and feel what it's like to live in a place where I was welcome. 2 African students I befriended in Atlanta while doing the story talked with me about their home in Gambia and the prospects of me making a transition to their way of life. I wanted to try, but I needed an income source, some job possibilities. I concluded I couldn't move my family there on a wing and a prayer. Finally, that idea was nixed, along with others. But I had to get away from the white mainstream. I thought, what if I simply walked away from it all? I knew my friends and family would think I'd lost my mind. I could hear them talking. He put all that effort into getting in. Now he talking about getting out? That boy done went crazy, child. He had a good job working for the white folks and walked away. He ought to be shot. Harder jobs ought to come by these days. Boy, they be killing that story been going on for years. This glass half empty stuff is wild. I couldn't help it if they weren't I couldn't help it if they wouldn't understand. They didn't see all the energy invested and the draining battles fought at work around issues of race. When I first went into the system, I assumed, like many blacks, that whites could be won over if I proved myself. Once they worked with me and realized I was just as smart and as skilled as them, they would drop the racist assumption they had used to justify holding me and other blacks back. They just keep moving the goalposts. But I saw now that racism ran deeper than a few misconceptions. I realized I could spend a lifetime trying to prove myself and nothing would change. Facts. That period of searching for an alternative was rough for me. I had the feeling of driving a car, running on empty, searching frantically for a fulfilling station, fearing that I would run out of gas and wind up stranded on some deserted road. For the first time in a while, I was very uncertain about my future and insecure. I felt like they said in an old song I used to hear, nowhere to run to, nowhere to hide. Stanley showed up in Atlanta all of a sudden one day, tired from the 11-hour drive from Portsmouth. He hadn't even called anybody to say he was on his way. It turned out he'd shot someone in Portsmouth over a drug debt and needed to lay low until things cooled down. Chip, one of my homeboys who lived near me, brought Stanley by the house. I needed a place to chill till I could find my own spot, Stanley explained. Can you put me up for a while? I'd bought a house by then, and it became sort of a way station for struggling relatives and guys from home who came through needing a hand. Sure, man, I said, no problem at all. Stanley, who had gone through high school with me, had some big-time drug dealer in Portsmouth. Had become a big-time drug dealer in Portsmouth. We hadn't hung out together, but I usually saw him or heard about him whenever I went home to visit. Whenever he cruised past the hangout spots in Cavalier Manor, the swimming pool, or the 7-Eleven, the dope fiends got real excited and tried to flag him down. They'd run across the field towards his Jeep, yelling his name, arms flailing in the air. If he didn't feel like being bothered, he'd toot the horn and keep pressing. During the couple of weeks he stayed with me, I let Stanley sleep on my living room couch. Although she didn't complain much, I got the feeling that Debbie didn't like the idea of having strange guys come through and stay with us. She'd be cordial, but more low-key than usual. I always made sure that the visitors didn't stay long. In the evenings, when I got home from work, Stanley and I would sit around and talk about how much our lives had changed. He ran off a list of people who were strung out. He was married and had a son, and he and his wife was pressuring him to give up the drug game and go legit. I'm going to give it up and go for a shot on the straight side, man, he said. I don't want to be trying to raise my son from the penitentiary. He'd been a welder at the shipyard before giving up to deal drugs. He said he intended to find a job in his field in Atlanta and sent for his family after he got established. He eventually found work welding for some private company, but things didn't go as planned. He'd come home evenings, shower, change clothes, and sit around moping about the hassles on his job. Every day he'd come home a little more depressed. I could tell he was trying to make a straight go at it, but it wasn't working. One night, I was sitting in the living room listening to music when he came home. Debbie and the children were asleep in bed. He had a brown bag in his hand. He opened the brown bag and held up a bottle of peach schnapps. Want some? Just like my old man used to do, I started drinking more lately to forget about work and problems at home. Yeah, man, bring me a glass. He brought two glasses in the living room, sat down, and poured two drinks. I gulped mine down and poured another. Stanley pulled out some papers and rolled a spliff. We talked and listened to music, each of us off in our own thoughts. Finally broke the silence. Finally, Stanley broke the silence. You know, I don't think I can hang, man. What you mean? When I was working the street, money was flowing in faster than I can count it. Now I'm getting paid twice a month, and these white folks act like they doing me a favor by paying me for the work I do. I can't do this, Holmes. This just ain't my thing no more. I understood. Once he had a taste of being his own boss, it was hard for him to go back to work for anybody else, especially somebody who was giving him a hard time. So what you want to do, man? I asked. I'm going to do some dealing here in Atlanta for a while, then maybe go back home and take it from there. I remained quiet. It's strange how logic shifts when the mind is desperate. The logic still functions, but it switches completely to another track. I thought maybe Stanley is on to something. When he was self-employed, he was independent, free. He had been disciplined. He'd bought a couple of houses and had some money stashed away. All he had to do was stay one step ahead of the man. In a way, it seemed that cats like him were smarter than the rest of us. They saw the handwriting on the wall. The choice was clear, the system or the streets. They knew there was no need for trying to blend into the system. All of us were aware that working in the system carried a price. Humiliation on some level. We shared the lingering fear that racially integrated work world with its relentless psychological assaults was in some way more perilous than life in the rough and tumble streets. At least in the streets, the playing field was level and the rules don't change. I wondered, what if I could make enough money to get out the system for a while and clear my head? I looked at Stanley through a thin haze of smoke. You think I can make some money doing this? I could tell he was surprised. Here I was, supposedly a good job and doing well. All the fellas at home on the streets talked about how well I was doing in the white folks' world. Now I was talking about backtracking into this life. At first, Stanley seemed puzzled, but I think he understood. The system is the system, no matter how good it seems. Yeah, man, he said, there's big money to be made. Not long after I talked, Stanley started making the rounds in Atlanta and got his own spot. Within several weeks, he knew more people than I had met there in a couple of years. A few times, Stanley paid me to let him leave his stash at my place and sent a few people there to make pickups. He told me he would let me come along when he made his next big coke buy so I could see how it's done. Although I had sold reefer and acid once, I knew nothing about handling cocaine. One day he came by, picked me up, took me with him to a house in southwest Atlanta. It was a rambling ranch-style brick house in a neighborhood where you wouldn't believe anything illicit was going on. A guy named Benny answered the door. We went inside. The lights were down low. It looked like deja vu. Besides Benny, there were two guys and a woman. I knew what that was all about. They were the parasites. They were the ones who had no money to buy it themselves. They hoped to benefit when the sampling started. We sat around talking and listening to music in a large open area that included a den and a kitchen. The druggies had that impatient look on their faces, that anticipation that sooner or later somebody's going to light up and they'll be right on hand when the pipe is passed. Benny pulled out some cocaine for Stanley's test. Stanley examined it warily. Working with the precision of a chemist, he poured the powdery stuff into a test tube, added a pinch of baking soda to harden it, then added some water, which he measured carefully. As he worked, everybody in the room watched silently, hungrily, eyeing that test tube. Stanley pulled out a cigarette lighter from his pocket, flicked it, held the flame under the test tube, and let it cook. He added a few drops of cold water and shook the gluey substance in the tube until it hardened into a rock that, when shaken, clanged the sides of the tube. He then took the rock out, placed it in the pipe. Stanley took a long, hard drag from the pipe, then passed it to me. I inhaled slowly, man, then hold it in. I inhaled, but it didn't work. No, man, inhale it slowly, then hold it in and work the hole in the pipe. I glanced around the room at the others. They looked anxious and irritable. No worse sight to a junkie than seeing good drugs wasted. Clumsily, I tried one more time, then passed the pipe along to the next man. They passed it around the room, each one carefully not to hog it too long. When it was all gone, everybody sat back in their seats, glassy-eyed, soaring. At some point, the woman got up from her seat and crept over the counter where Stanley had cooked the stuff. She studied the countertop carefully, looking for particles of cocaine that might have dropped. Dazed, she seemed to have forgotten that anybody else was in the room. She ran her hand slowly and carefully across the top of the counter, then leaned down until she was eye level with the countertop. Then she swept her hand across the counter again, gathering particles on a piece of paper. She found only a few white particles, but she walked away from that counter smiling triumphantly, like she struck gold, and sat back down. Right. The whole scene reminded me of the madness I'd known years before. It made me think hard about what I was about to get into. I learned something important about myself in that moment. I learned that I couldn't return to that life, even if I wanted to. The brutal harshness of the world conflicted sharply with what I had become. How could I return to that? Given all I've learned about life and God over the years, how could I deny that knowledge and live with myself? No. No matter how rough times were in Babylon, I had to give in to what I knew was right. Thinking about all that, there was only one thing left to be done. I looked at Stanley. I'm ready to ride, man. He glanced at me, then flashed a knowing grin. Okay, boss. He completed his transaction and grabbed his jacket. Benny walked us to the door. When he was sure we were out of earshots of the other, he said, "We're going to freak this skank when her head gets bad. You sure you don't want to get a piece of that?" I've never been more certain about anything in my life. I said, "Nah, man, I got to go." I walked out of that world and never looked back. Yeah. Chapter 37, Danny. Sitting at my desk working, I noticed a tall, lanky white dude walk into the newsroom and head towards my row. He was casually dressed, a silly-looking, stingy-brimmed straw hat on his curly head, and a lightweight mustard-colored zip-up jacket, padded boy slacks, and a pair of those shoes construction workers wear. No sport coat or tie. He was dressed so casual, I'd assume he came in for a story interview. Then he walked straight over to the aisle where I was, plopped a notepad down on the empty desk behind me, and took a seat. I thought, just what I needed, another cracker near me. I stood up to go to the supply cabinet. Before I could leave, the new guy sprang from his seat, extending his hand, and said, "Hi, I'm Danny. Danny Baum." He was 3 inches from my face, smiling like there was something funny. I shook his hand, "I'm Nathan," and walked away. Later, I saw Danny walking across the noon room. He had a goofy demeanor, long strides, arms swinging wild like a northern Gomer Pyle or Mr. Green Jeans on Captain Kangaroo. A white woman reporter who sat near me leaned over to another white reporter, pointed at Danny, and whispered, "That's the new guy. Do you know what he did? He moved into a black neighborhood. Everybody's talking about it. Somebody's got to talk to him." Apparently unaware that I overheard, they burst out laughing as if this new guy, this crazy northerner, had done the stupidest thing in the world. I looked at them a minute and thought to myself, uh-huh, these are the same pseudo-liberal crackers who will get up in your face and swear they're not racist and they don't see color. Sad facts. Yet, they thought it was hilarious that a white guy was so colorblind that he moved into a black neighborhood. I decided the next time a white person told me they didn't see color, I was going to call him a lie to his face. Let him know that he can't insult my intelligence and get away with it. After I finished going off on white people in my head, I turned my thoughts back to this Danny guy. What kind of person was he to move into a black neighborhood? Was it a mistake on his part, or did he do that intentionally? Newsroom gossip held that he had come to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution from the Wall Street Journal. Normally, that's considered a step down professionally. The Wall Street Journal is, after all, one of the top newspapers in the country. When asked why he left the Journal to come to Atlanta, Danny had told someone, "The people at the Wall Street Journal were too stuffy and pretentious. I decided to get a real job with real people who would let me chase fire engines and write about it." In the following weeks, I watched him closely to see what he was about. It didn't take long to see that there was something different about this cat. Other people in the newsroom, blacks and whites, recognized it too. I found him to be different in a pleasant way. Whenever he said something to me, there was a straightforwardness, a childlike honesty that I didn't get from most other white people. With him, I didn't have to feel hesitancy. I felt from other whites or racial baggage getting in the way. And he'd ask me the damnedest things out of the blue. One day he slid his swivel chair back near mine and asked, "Why aren't black reporters get more aggressive around here, Nate?" It was the kind of thing I knew a lot of whites around there wondered about, but were afraid to ask for fear of sounding racist or for fear of revealing that they were in fact racist. But Danny didn't seem to care. I concluded it must have been because he was secure in his mind that he wasn't racist and he had nothing to hide. He was simply curious. He didn't know, so he did what any intelligent person should have done. He asked rather than assumed. I respected that about him and found out, in spite of myself, there was something about this dude I really liked. Since we sat so close to each other, we began rapping a lot of our deaths. I learned that Danny had done his own examination of the white mainstream and reached some of the same conclusions as me, that it was totally fucked up and they needed to scratch all the rules governing the macho corporate game and go back to the drawing board, drawing stick men on cave walls, because that's about how far they'd come in human development. By the time he came to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Danny had decided that he was no longer going to play the game by their silly rules. He didn't brown nose the bosses or try to join the white folks' privileged insiders club in the newsroom. He didn't try to get in with all the right people to gain an edge. In fact, he held management in contempt and talked about them as much as I did. When Hosea Williams led a march in Forsyth County to protest the racism and open hostility to blacks who moved there, Danny took part in the march, even though our bosses had ordered reporters to stay out of it for the sake of objectivity. When he did, I concluded that this dude was truly wild. One day, Danny slid his seat near mine and said, "Nate, how about coming over to my place for dinner this weekend? Let me see what I got planned, I said, and I'll get back to you on that. I didn't have anything planned. I said that to buy some time to think about it. Think about it. Even considering spending my free weekend time with a white person's house was a major leap for me. Had it been anyone else, I wouldn't have had to think about it at all. I'd have declined without blinking an eye. But I considered it with Danny and decided, what the hell, I'd give it a try. Besides, I wanted to see just where he lived and ask him why he had moved into a black neighborhood. When I went to Danny's place that weekend, he definitely lived in the hood. He rented a detached house in a working class neighborhood in the Hosea Williams Council District. Danny was dating another reporter at the paper, Meg Knox, who lived in Savannah and worked for the paper's bureau there, several hours from Atlanta. She seemed just as laid back and cool as Danny. We ate, then we went into his living room, sat down, talked, and drank beer. It was the most comfortable I'd felt around white people. I didn't feel like Danny and Meg were judging me by their standards all the time. They didn't try to pretend there were no differences between us like everybody else I knew. They celebrated our differences, and we joked about the contrast in the way that blacks and white talked, cooked, dressed, danced, and did everything else. At some point, Danny told me he'd move into this black neighborhood because he can get the best deal for his money there. I like this house. It has a porch and a yard. The neighbors are friendly. Actually, I'm thinking about buying it. We talked about our taste in white music and black music. I told them how I'd learned about white music, about the time I stole those tapes out of some white person's car. Danny played a tape for me and explained why a particular white artist I'd asked about was currently so popular. The singer was Bruce Springsteen, and the tape was Born in the USA. Listen, I used to sing that song all the time because I was not born in the USA, but that was going crazy. We talked a lot about race. I guess it helped that Danny was Jewish. Danny told me he had his share of bruises with racism, and it didn't sit well with him. He asked me about Louis Farrakhan, whom he said frightened the Jews with his statement that Hitler was a great man. Nate, he asked, why does Farrakhan hate Jews? I said, I don't agree with everything Farrakhan says, but I don't think he hates Jews. I think he's widely misunderstood and his comments are often taken out of context. He's simply pro-black. A lot of white people assume that if you're pro-black, then you must be anti-white. You have to listen closely to what Farrakhan says to understand where he's coming from. He asked to borrow a tape of Farrakhan so that he could hear it for himself. We talked a lot about other things. I was surprised to learn that he had actually read books written by black people. James Baldwin, Richard Wright, Ralph Ellison. It amazed me that a white person would do that when it wasn't required of them. He seemed equally as surprised to learn that one of my favorite authors was a Jewish writer, Chaim Patuk. I left Danny's place late that night, surprised that time had passed so quickly and shocked that I had actually spent a weekend evening voluntarily with whites and had a grand time. In return, I invited Meg and Danny over to my place for dinner. They met Debbie and our small children. It was one of those evenings when differences between me and Debbie seemed to vanish. A night when there was no arguments about in-laws and money problems. After we put the children to bed, the four of us sat on the front porch and laughed and talked for hours. It was the first time I'd had any white people over my house. Listen, this is funny. All right, we'll stop there. I had to ask myself, when's white time? Because after 5 o'clock, I go into a very, very, very black world. Dang, that's wild. I know I haven't had a white person over here. Woo! I can't even remember the last time I had one at my place, which is wild. Oh my God. The bananas. All right, family. I hope you have a great rest of your week. It's been a wild one for me. But again, I hope you have a great rest of your week. Hope to see you Tuesday for Soul Swami Live, our general healing. And if you can't make it Tuesday, I hope to see you back here Thursday for book club. I appreciate you. Much gratitude for your time and plenty of blessings. Peace, family.